Welcome to the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. I'm thrilled you're here. My name is Jason Elkins, and in addition to being your host, I'm also a former U.S. Army paratrooper, third-generation commercial hot air balloon pilot, paramotor pilot, ex-Montana fly fishing guide, advanced open water scuba diver, and a full-time nomad that's visited more than 30 countries on 6 continents. As a seasoned adventure travel expert with a passion for creating and sharing meaningful experiences, I'm on a quest to impact the lives of adventure travelers, the tour operators they rely on, and the communities that host them. Every week, I bring you exclusive interviews with fascinating adventure tourism experts who have agreed to share their personal stories, favorite destinations, and some invaluable travel insights they've picked up along the way. We'll enjoy a casual conversation, create some connections, and likely share some laughs. It's my hope that by the end of each episode, this big world will feel just a bit smaller. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Big World Made Small podcast for the adventure traveler. Today, we've got Ingeborg Oluka here with us. She's the managing director of Alakara. Ingeborg, so nice to see you again. Happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, Jason. It's nice to be here.
Super excited to have a conversation with you today because I know you've got a fascinating story. We're going to spend most of our time talking about kind of your story, how you got from where you were to where you are now. Excited to hear that. And before we do that, let's give our listeners kind of the, 60-second elevator pitch about Alakara so they kind of get an idea of what you do. And then we're going to go figure out how you got to that point.
Thank you. Alakara is a small travel company that focuses on Uganda. And we help people experience the country, can I say, in a deeper way. It's not just about gorillas and safaris. It's also about hiking, rafting, cultural experiences, human connection. So our goal is to show travelers that Uganda is more than adventure and more welcoming than they expect. And also we have a very strong commitment to the local communities and conservation in Uganda so that the trips have a positive impact.
Very cool.
That might be more than 40 seconds, but...
No, that was perfect. And I'm excited. I definitely want to get back to that in more detail because, to be honest with you, you're the first person that's working in Uganda that really specializes in Uganda that we've had here on the show. And I don't know much about the country. I mean, I know gorillas. That's pretty much what most people hear, I think. So I definitely want to learn more about that. You've also introduced me to a few other people in the country that I'm starting conversations with. So I'm excited about that as well. But you don't sound or look like you're from Uganda. I don't know, maybe that's very, very stereotypical, but also your name, that type of thing. So let's figure out how far back do we need to go to kind of understand how you got into this position?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, no, I don't sound, I definitely don't look like I'm from Uganda. I can speak English like a Ugandan, and I probably do, but when I speak to people who are non-Ugandans, I try to adjust. I come from Norway, so I usually say that I really learned to speak English in Uganda. Of course,
okay, why is that?
At school before, but I didn't really speak it. I didn't like it at school.
Okay, but you like to speak it in Uganda. I'm just curious about that.
Well, because when you learn language at school, it's just a subject. It's boring. It's grammar and filling in the right words in the right spots. But of course, the language, when you speak it, when you use it for communication, that's a whole different thing.
I would agree.
Anyway,
well, hold on though.
Uh-huh.
I'm not afraid to ask questions that make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to do it. What language do they typically speak in Uganda?
Well, that is a good question. There are about 50 languages in Uganda.
Yeah.
So English is the common, the official language. It's the language which is taught in schools. And I've been mostly in the Northeast, and there are you can go to a village and there are 3 different languages from 3 different language families. So there is a lot of English being spoken. Also quite far
cool.
away.
I just had to ask that. Now let's go back to...
Great.
You didn't like speaking English when you were learning it in school. What else was going on in school?
Well, good question. Well, I was this kind of kid who a bit nerdy. I liked school generally, mostly social sciences, religion, history, those kind of things have always interested me. Yeah, but I come from quite a small place in a rural part of southern Norway, and so we didn't travel. Okay, we traveled a lot in Norway and a little bit to Denmark and Sweden, Finland, but I had not really been out of Scandinavia until I was 18. And that's probably a little bit typical because my first trip elsewhere was to Bosnia in 1998. So the rest of the school went for a school trip to Russia, St. Petersburg, and I went to Bosnia on my own to visit a friend who had been in Norway as a refugee and moved back. So that was interesting. Then the following year, I traveled to Uganda, and I was part of. I was in a Bible college actually, so we were like 5 girls traveling together, 19, 20-year-olds, and stayed in Uganda for 5 months and traveled a lot in really, really rural places. It was a lot of fun. It was like for me that was a life-changing experience, and like since then my life has really been a lot about Uganda. Yeah.
I'm guessing so. It sounds like, so you were 19 or 20 then when you went to Uganda the first time?
Yeah, 19.
So growing up, you mentioned you traveled a little bit in Scandinavia. What was your childhood like? Were you out doing things adventurous, or was it mostly, I mean, what did the childhood look like?
Yeah, there was a lot of being outdoors. In Norway, we have this thing called friluftsliv. It's like outdoor living. You go hiking, riding in the mountains, in the forest, canoeing, all those things. And my parents love that, so we did a lot of that.
You called it, what was the phrase you said? In Norway we have a thing called,
Oh, well, in English, I think it's outdoor living.
okay, it's kind of the outdoor lifestyle. All right.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
so we did a lot of that, and yeah, I just quite a
Did you,
quite a
so
normal
during,
growing up in the 80s in Norway.
yeah, did you have aspirations of doing more overseas travel, living overseas? I mean, when was the first moment you thought, geez, maybe someday I'll live in Uganda and run a tour operation company? I mean, what
Well,
was,
not living overseas, but I did want to travel. So when I'd finished high school, secondary, I applied for this Bible college where we could go and stay abroad for 5 months. Of course, many schools have this, maybe a trip for 2, 3, 4 weeks, but I really wanted that a little bit long term going abroad. And then, well, Uganda was my first priority when I
what did
applied.
your, what did your parents think about that?
Well, they didn't. I think they were okay with it. I think they liked it.
Oh, okay.
They have this probably this thinking that it's a good thing to go out and see new things and experience new places. But of course, I do believe, especially my mom was probably a little bit worried. Sometimes, not always, but yeah.
Do you think, you said a lot of the other students went to Russia?
Yeah, that was in secondary school. Like we had a school trip. That was like the
Oh,
last
okay.
year of secondary,
Okay. All right. So
and I went to Bosnia.
yeah, well, that was, I guess, where I was going with that is you chose to go somewhere else. You said you visited a friend. Are there certain, like, from in your parents' mind? I was just curious, like in your parents' mind, because Uganda maybe sounds like it's a long ways away. I don't know. I grew up in the States. So growing up in the States, if I said right out of school, I'm going to go to Uganda for 5 months, my parents might have had a totally different response than if I said I'm going to go to Canada or Paris or something like that. So I'm just trying to get a feel for, did Uganda seem like a reasonable place for you to go for 5 months, or was it just no big deal?
Well, good question. Well, they didn't say much. I don't know exactly what they were thinking, but I think maybe that's because they wanted me to make the decisions and they didn't want
All right.
to hinder me in what I wanted to do.
It's
But
just,
of
it's
course,
interesting.
Uganda, to that generation, when you say Uganda, the first thing they say, and probably the only thing they say, is Idi Amin. And then
Okay.
they might think of the raid on Entebbe somewhere in the 70s, which is like the two big famous things about Uganda, apart from gorillas, which wasn't really famous 25 years ago. So yeah, they probably had their worries, but they didn't really
Didn't
project
say
them
much.
on me.
Well, it's interesting because I mean, I think that that's part of why you and I are having this conversation today is because they didn't project them onto you, whatever they were. I don't know, but I've had a lot of conversations. I've been around a while, and some parents have a really hard time keeping their opinions to themselves. And like, well, geez, can't you just go to Sweden? Or they say things that make you kind of question yourself. And isn't it great when and then other times on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like, hey, you're 18, you should probably get out of the house now. You should go somewhere far away and have a big adventure. And how can we help you go? And then there's maybe the parents more like yourself. It's like, sure, if you're interested in this, we'll support it, but didn't say much more than that, it sounds like. So
yeah, I think so.
All right. So what happened in Uganda what's the thing you remember most about that trip that you think influenced you coming back and going that direction?
Well, that was definitely like the people. We the way we were received is like here we are, 5 really young girls, not knowing a lot about the world and nothing about Uganda, and we were just received in such a beautiful way. We were the first team from our it was a kind of a pilot, so they had not received any teams like that before, which I think was also a good thing for us. Yeah, so I mean, we were like, after 1 week, we were singing in a wedding, and for Christmas, we had so many invitations that we had to kind of go around and spend 1 hour in so many different places because we wouldn't say no, I mean, we were really, really included. And up to now, I think that's the best thing about Uganda. It's just the people, the culture. There's a lot of fun. It's relaxed. It's a lot of laughing and joking, and it's just a whole different social life.
That's very, very cool. Where did you live? I mean, did you stay in the same place the entire 5 months? What were the accommodations like?
Yeah, good question. So we had a house in a town called Sorote. It's a small town in the northeast. But our work was so we were working with the local church, and they wanted us to help to join them in showing the Jesus film, which is a movie that was made in the 70s and has been translated into a lot of languages. So they had recently translated it to this language, Ateso, and so every Monday we would go to a village, and then we would normally sleep at the home of the priest in that area. So that was really like simple standards. We would bring our mattresses and our mosquito nets, and and like showering would be in a bucket outside in the night, just throwing water on yourself. So we'd stay there from like Monday to Thursday or Friday morning, and then we'd go back to town. And I think that's also what really, these memories of sitting outside, because you can only show a movie in the night after dark, and then sitting outside and, the stars and just, that African night with the sounds and the smells, and it's just so beautiful.
For those of our listeners that are just listening to this and don't see your face on the screen, I just want to convey that I see your eyes lit up and your cheek muscles are all tight and you're smiling so big as you recall these memories. So that's just watching you makes me think, oh my gosh, I clearly need to go there.
Oh, you do.
And I want to hear more about the experience, because that's a unique experience. I could go to Uganda. I'm not going to have the same experience you had on that trip. That sounds very, very unique. One, it was a while ago, and as you mentioned, you were like the first group of not necessarily foreigners, but on this type of project. I suspect a lot. Well, I don't know. I'm going to ask you this. I don't care. I'll ask. I suspect that 5 white girls from Norway show up in Uganda. Probably the first opportunity for a lot of the locals that you met to have conversations with people of your background. Is that a fair statement?
Yes,
okay.
It is.
Okay. Yeah. So many questions that just roll around in my head. What other than the people, I hear the people. I get that. That's obviously the thing. Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. You said it was 5 of you. So were the other 4 if I was speaking to the other 4 right now about their experience in Uganda, would they be all lit up like you are? Do you think? I mean, I know you don't. Really? You didn't have anybody in the group like, oh my gosh, I want to go home. This is horrible, or you were all on board?
No, we're all on board. Of course, we were different, and like 2 of us, whenever we had time off, we would always be out and about and visit people, and so 2 or 3, and then some others would probably like to stay more in the house. But yeah, if you ask them now, I think all of them would say something similar to me. But of course, not all of them have kind of continued with Uganda the way I have.
Well, that was the second part, and I don't know if you're still in touch or how long you were still in touch, but do you know any of have any of them branched into adventure travel, tourism, any of that stuff as far as you know, or are you just the one that just like totally jumped in with both feet?
No, not tourism, but a few of them have been back many times. One is a professor of African literature now, and she keeps going
Oh,
back to Uganda.
cool.
And yeah, and at least one more kept going back for quite a while. But of course, then life happens, and sometimes it's not always so easy to get
Yeah.
the time and money to travel to Uganda.
But what I get out of this conversation so far is that it was a life-changing event for you, and it sounds like at least a few of the other girls. So when you're talking to, we can talk about your family stuff. I don't know what's going on there, but what's your advice to parents with 18-year-old daughters that are getting ready to graduate high school? Do you just kind of let them pick and choose and just kind of not really share your thoughts and feelings, or are you on that one end of the spectrum, like you need to go do this something somewhere really different, or would you approach it differently than your parents did, I guess?
Of course, a little bit different probably, but like I have a son who is now 18 and a daughter is 15, so
Okay, so that's
I
relevant.
would think it's relevant. Yes, so I would think I would do some background checks, and I mean it's not all organizations or all kind of people who send young people to. I mean, I think at that young age there should be some kind of system. I mean, they should have some kind of framework and not just go completely on their own to places which I mean I've traveled a fair bit, and last 2 years ago I was in Asia for the first time, and I went to Bangkok, and I was like, that's a whole different thing to travel to Bangkok because with kind of with what you know as a Norwegian or European, you can get around, you can find your way. But when you come to Uganda or Cameroon or some of these countries, you really need something, some kind of safety net, someone who can pick you up in the airport and who kind of knows where to introduce you, because it's quite hard for, I would say, a European Western young person to navigate in some of these places.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense, because I think a lot of Europeans will do I guess we would describe it as the gap year, or the finish school, and they go somewhere for backpacking or whatever. And so what I hear you saying is, okay, yeah, if they're doing that through Europe, it's quite common. They're going to run
Yeah,
into a bunch of other backpackers, even a lot of places in Latin America, Southeast Asia, they're going to see that. But what I think I hear you saying is maybe Africa. I don't want to put it all in one bucket because it's a big continent, but I don't know. Help me out here. Is that what you're saying? Is maybe some of these countries you need
well,
to think ahead a little bit more?
I would say so. Not because it's necessarily more dangerous, but because the society works in such a different way. And if you don't have any experience with navigating in a place like that, you may end up with maybe nothing bad may happen. It may, but you just won't have a very nice
You're
experience.
just not going to get the same level of
If you come
depth
on
of
your own
experience.
to Entebbe airport and then you just find your way to some random place, and you might have a really good time, but you might also miss out on a lot of the
All right.
best.
So here's just a question just popped into my head. If somebody is listening to this and has teenage children and they're intrigued by this conversation, could somebody reach out to you and say, "Hey, I want to send my kids to Uganda. Could you make a referral? Are you aware of
Absolutely.
any of these organizations? I suspect you know a lot of people that could probably help with
Yeah,
something like that."
absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Very,
They
very
could
cool.
reach out. But it is a beautiful place to go as a young person, and like I said, like people are extremely welcoming, extremely friendly. Like I mean, like really, I've traveled a lot. I don't think I've been to any other country where people are that friendly and welcoming. It's
All right, that's very cool. So I want to go back to kind of that point. You did the 5 months in Uganda. We know you ended up back there, but what happened in between to kind of shape all that? Because I suspect there were a lot of steps.
yes, there are many steps. So after I came back to Norway, I just wanted to go back. So I worked and studied for like 6 7 months, and then I went back for 1 year.
Okay, that's
And
quick.
I was working as a volunteer, sort of, mostly in the primary school. Then I went back to Norway. I continued studies, and then I got my university to approve a semester abroad in Uganda for me. So I did a semester in a university in Uganda, and so on and so forth, back and forth for the next, like from until I'd finished my master. I was about 8 years in total because of all this traveling.
What were you studying?
I did a master of development management.
Okay. So what is development management?
Well, it's a combination of development studies, which is really political science and with a bit of economy, but focusing on, can I say, the developing world. And of course, and then with the management aspect, there was a bit of management and leadership.
And I take it you chose that particular path of majors and stuff like that because you saw how well that would tie in with Uganda? Because it sounds like you were already kind of set on Uganda.
And it was really also just because I found it very interesting. Yeah. So, and also it was an online master, which was quite rare those days. So then, of course, I could study from Uganda.
Gosh. Okay. So you get your master's, and then did you make them? Well, tell us. I don't want to quite get to where you're at now, but how'd you get from master's degree to where you're at now?
Okay, so some years after the first time I went to Uganda, I met my husband. So just after I finished the master, we got married, and then we moved to Norway. And then kind of life happened. We had children, we built a house, and we didn't really travel so much.
Let's talk about this. I'm curious if you're willing to share. What was that like for him to adjust to being from Uganda and moving to Norway? Because I imagine that might be a challenging adjustment for some people.
Yes, it is. I think for almost all people, it is a big adjustment, and it has been a journey, I would say. It's not. What can I say?
You don't have to say anything. I'm just curious.
I mean, when you come as a highly educated African with a lot of work experience, and then you come to Norway, and the only jobs you can get are like assistant something, in the beginning. That's really hard. But of course, with time, it picks up. Yeah.
Did he like Norway in the beginning? I mean, well, again, tell me as much as you want, but I mean, because it's kind of colder there, maybe not quite as much sunlight.
The day he arrived, it was like minus 16 degrees Celsius. So I didn't like that.
He must really love you. I think Norway is probably a great place. I haven't been there either.
It is a great place.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, we talk about it quite a lot. Like, okay, in some ways, it's probably become quite a bit Norwegianized in the way you think. You get used to things working. In Norway, everything is quite smooth. Systems work and it's just easy. And in Uganda, it's like, oh gosh, just opening a bank account is like it's a 3 month process. And like, I wish we had this login and you just use your electronic ID and things are sorted. So of course,
two different worlds.
Two different worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So how did you guys? How did the idea come up? How did the idea come up to start your business and get involved in tourism?
Yeah, so actually, like you probably heard, the first years I was in Uganda, I never went to... Okay, the very first time I did go to Mount Elgon. So me and one of the other girls, we climbed to the top of Mount Elgon, which is a volcanic mountain on the border between Uganda and Kenya. And the peak is 4,321 meters above sea level. So that was like the only tourist thing I did for the first number of years. Then in 2015, when our children were like 5 and 7, we were going to Uganda for the summer, and we were like, we need them to like Uganda. We need to do something really nice together, not just because when you just go and visit family and especially with young children, if you stay 1 week here, 1 week there, it's like when they're just starting to get comfortable in a place, you move on. So it was a bit stressful to travel with young children, and so we decided to go for safari. Until that, my only safari experience was in a big bus in Kruger on tarmac roads. And I was like, I don't understand why people are so mad about safari, because it just felt like driving around a zoo, to be honest. So we went to Murchison Falls National Park, and we had this wonderful game drive with the ranger guide from Uganda Wildlife Authorities. Was like, he was about to retire. He had a lot of experience. He was so good, and he would spot any small and big thing, and just a bird flying by, and it tells you all about this bird you've hardly seen, because, but he has seen it, and also, so it was such a wonderful experience, and that really was probably the start. And then 2 years later, we had my parents visiting us, traveling with us, and to Uganda, and we were like, okay, let's go to Murchison Falls. And we did, and then in between there, we had also started a farm, and we went there also with my parents. And at that time, it was like the house, it was just like one house, and the compound was extremely muddy when it was raining, and there was like a pit latrine outside, and very, very simple. But it was interesting. They liked it. We liked it. And so we said, so when they left, we were like, maybe we should start up something. And I was also in the process of, we have always thought that we want to move back to Uganda. And my husband has started some businesses, which are doing really well. And he's like, but what are you going to do? I mean, you can't just go to Uganda and be a housewife. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't like that. and I was always like, okay, I was first in the development world, if we can say, but at some point I kind of lost faith in those NGO development projects. It creates, the whole way it makes people think, there's that dependency mindset, which I think is really destructive, really. So because I was thinking, like, I could be a consultant, but for development projects and things like that, but I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And also have this thing that I don't want a job which in Uganda, a Ugandan could do much better than me.
Mm-hmm.
So just because I'm from out, you get this job, and that's not nice. So I was like, okay, what can I do with my background, with my experience, which no one else really can do? So when my parents had left that time, I'd actually gone to the beach in Entebbe. Yeah, we're taking the kids, and then I just sat down. I got this idea, and I was like, I need to go to a shop and buy a book and a pen so I can sit and write and make some calculations and find. So I did that, and I was like, okay, I was just trying to price a tour. So if I make this trip like this, what will it cost, and what can I sell it for? I was like, wow, it can actually make some money.
Okay.
So that's how the idea came about. And then we also decided at the farm that we have, when we went back there the same year, let's put up some guest cottages. This round local style, a little bit improved local style, but with grass thatched roofs. And so we did that. And then when we came back to Norway, I started a company. I was just advertising on Facebook with my network, and we got actually 2 groups who wanted to travel the next summer, 2018. And so we started. And the guest cottages, oh God, that was crazy. I think they finished touching the roof 3 hours before we arrived with the visitors. But it worked. It did work. So, and that was really a nice experience. And we did the same in the summer of 19. So in the beginning, it was just that. It was a couple of trips per year. I was the tour leader, taking people around the country. And that was fun. And then, of course, I the whole story. Maybe you want to ask something.
Well, I do have a question. When I asked you what your parents thought about you going to Uganda the first time, you're like, well, I'm not really sure. They really didn't say much. So now the same question. What did your husband think about you starting a tour business and setting up cottages at the farm and all that?
Well, oh no, he's all in, and everything setting up cottages and things, that's him.
Okay, so he was excited. This is something you guys were doing together. He was excited.
Yeah, so the company itself, because both of us are owners, but the tour operations, I do 99% of that. But when it comes to things happening on ground in Uganda, and especially at the farm, that's really deep in the village. Even if I do speak a bit of the local language, and I can't really. It would be really, really hard for me to do those projects. So he is the main person in that.
Now, did he grow up right there near the farm? Is that his home area? Or, I mean, other than it's the same country, but he didn't grow up right there.
No, It's not his home area, but it's still in the same area where they speak that language.
Okay. All right. Very, very cool. So you started promoting some trips on social media, Facebook, I think you said, got some groups and
then
then you
COVID
started.
happened.
Yeah. Why does that always come up in every conversation on this show? I don't know.
You
It
wonder.
kind of had an impact, didn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So where were you going into COVID? What did things look like for you from your perspective?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I at that time I was trying to develop, like, to increase the number of tours per year. But I think that's also, so it's hard to say, was it COVID? Was it like a natural development? Well, no one knows. But that's what I was thinking. Like, okay, I was still having this model that, I take people on trips. What happened after COVID, which I think is quite common when I talk to others, is that this kind of scheduled group tours became really hard to fill up.
Yeah, I'm hearing that.
And
Yeah.
more and more people, like, but then I also got more requests, like, okay, we are going to Uganda, we hear you can make a program, can you, so more like tailor
More the
made.
tailor-made
Yeah.
custom departures. Why do you think that is? What's your take on that? Because this has come up a few times. I've been hearing this. I'm curious what your take on it. Why did people not want to go with group departures?
Honestly, I don't know. I just know that's how it is.
That's just what you saw. I mean, we'd had some conversations about maybe just the impact of COVID on people's thought processes about things. It's like, I don't know when I'm going to be able to go. Well, let me back up. Sometimes the group trips, in order to fill them and market them, we might set them further in advance. So you might say, okay, if I'm going to fill a whole group, I better give myself a year to do it. So I pick a date next year. I start promoting that. While at the same time, you've got customers on the other side of it looking at it saying, after coming through COVID, I don't want to wait. If I have an opportunity, I'm going to go now, because you don't know what's going to come in a year from now. So maybe I suspect that if you looked at the stats, it'd be like people are booking, with less notice.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I'm ready to go now. I've got my family on board, my friends, whatever. They're all saying so we're going to go in 2 months instead of wait for a year. Even if waiting for the year meant that I got to join a group, maybe it's a little less expensive. Maybe there's other benefits to going with a group, but I don't know. Does that sound about right?
That could be part of it. But also, I think maybe it's part of that whole thing of going in a group, that more people would like to go with only their family or only their group of friends. And also when we have this group, just like we had before, and also last year, we've had like a family safari, which we have kind of marketed and of course made to fit families. And that has been popular, but I think that also, it's in the summer holiday, obviously. But then some kids are going for this camp and this football tournament, and somehow, it's like, so I had quite a number of people say, we would love to go, but this year is not possible because of ABCD. And so, of course, that's also the kind of the downside of scheduled tours, is like, okay, you have people who really want to go, but then they're not able to go at those particular dates. And then, so I've started to move away from that. And also, of course, what can I say? Yeah, but I think after COVID has been really an interesting time. We are developing in a different way than we expected. So what we did last year was that we registered a company in Uganda. So now we have like our own DMC that we are developing in Uganda. And also on the Norway side, I've gotten some new, can I say, partners, people I work with. So I have one guy who is he's a Norwegian married to Ugandan, and he has been a professional safari guide for many years. He has been he was part of developing the gorilla tourism in the beginning. So we do have some group trips with him, and he's a photographer. So people are into wildlife photography, birding, all these kind of things. So we have that, but more and more it's like the tailor-made custom trips.
I'm curious. I hear that loud and clear, and I'm curious if you had somebody call you and said, we can go anytime, because there's some advantages to group trips. That's what I'm trying to work around to, is like, what's the upside of doing a group trip? And maybe let's say a family of 4, to make it a little bit more closer to the break even. got a family of four, we can go anytime, flexible, we're easy to get along with. Should we do a customized one? Because we see your group tour, it looks great. Should we do that, or should we do one on our own? What's that conversation typically look like? Like, what are the benefits of going with the group?
I think especially maybe for families, it's a big benefit of going with other families because the kids have a lot of fun. At least that has been the experience with the groups we've had. And we've been kind of lucky that each group has had like kids around the same age, so like from different families, but within same age brackets. So they have really had a lot of fun together. So that is one big advantage. And also for the adults, you don't, I mean, socially, it's a whole different thing. So if you're someone who really loves to be with people and get to know new people, a group trip is great. And of course, also for a family, families are often quite price sensitive. And of course, if you're when I price a group a scheduled group tour, maybe I price with 10 people. That means transport.
So they can spread some of those costs out across the group.
And the total price goes down. Yeah.
Then,
of course, if you have specific wishes, if you have something you really want to do, then a scheduled safari is great. And some people also in a busy life really want that time just to be with the four of them and time as a family. So it's really about what they want.
So let's talk about what they want. Somebody reaches out to you, is not sure if they want to do a group. Maybe they're just not sure. I mean, do you encourage people to just fill out a form on a website, communicate by email? Do you try and set up video calls with them, phone calls? But like somebody listening to, because some people listening to this might be like, oh, I don't like video calls, or can't we just do this by email? I'm busy, it's hard for me to schedule stuff. But what's your advice to somebody? Like, what do you think is important when planning a trip?
I've started last year to do much more phone calls and video calls. And I think that's really, it saves us a lot of time on both sides because I get I get so much more information about what exactly they want. Because when people they write, okay, maybe we want this, or they've done some research, we want ABCD. But when you talk on phone or on video call, it's just much easier to gauge exactly where they are, what they want. And they also get much more information.
Right. So. And some of that's just from facial expressions. So if they're like
the 16-year-old boy chipping in when I mentioned rafting, he's like, yes, you want rafting. It's like, okay.
Exactly. You're not going to get that through an email, right? So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I think it's really, really, really helpful to just jump on a video call early on, because you can get so much information out of them. And when you're suggesting ideas, you can see the look on their face, and you're not spending a lot of time trying to put together some extension that they just mentioned that maybe they'd like. But when you're on the phone call or the video call and you discuss the extension, and you can kind of see their forehead kind of wrinkle up, and you're like, well, maybe that's not the right one.
Yeah, and I think maybe especially with a destination which is quite unknown to most people. So like you said, what do I know about Uganda? I know gorillas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if it was going to Paris, maybe an email would be enough, because, okay, I want to see ABCD, tick all these boxes.
If it's Paris, you can probably book it on.
So that conversation is really, really useful, I think, both for me and for the clients.
So if you had to bet, because one way that we measure group satisfaction is by the feedback we get not group satisfaction, client satisfaction is by the feedback you get after. And I always felt that the people that I could discuss it with in person, it hasn't always been video, but even if it's just a phone call or a video call, as opposed to the person that was all back and forth by email, if I had to bet how the review is going to look on TripAdvisor afterwards or whatever, it's like, I'm pretty sure that the one we had the face-to-face with is going to be 5 stars. The one that was all by email, I was kind of worried. It's like, well,
yeah, you don't know exactly.
I did what I could do, but then, I remember I had a client that had booked some trips with us before, and he'd always kind of done it not just by email, but through his assistant through email. So we're doing email stuff with his assistant. And I remember he took a trip. I worked for a business. We did a lot of fly fishing stuff. That was a fairly important part of a lot of the trips we did. But he had taken trips before with us to the more traditional fishing places. And then he chose a place that wasn't necessarily a traditional fishing place, but he said he wanted to go to Ireland with his girlfriend, stay 10 days, and he wanted to have a guide for each day. But this was all through his assistant. And I remember he went. Ireland's, I'm not going to say anything negative about Ireland. There's great fly fishing, but it's not the same as Montana or Patagonia or some of these other places. And he ended up being quite upset that the fishing wasn't what he expected. So here I am, kind of a fishing expert, but I'm trying to transact this for him, set this up through his assistant who knows nothing about fishing for him. And it's all by email. And I remember thinking, I learned a big lesson is, if I'd said, okay, let's get the conversation started with the assistant, but Dan, let's jump on a call for 10 minutes. Let's just 10 minutes. Because I need to understand, is this a fishing trip or is this a trip to Ireland? Because it may not be the same thing.
Exactly.
And I could have saved so much difficulty for him because it was a stressful thing for him because it wasn't what he expected. So, but anyway, thank you for letting me share that story. But I hope the people listening to this, if they want to go to Uganda, my point is book a call with you.
Exactly. It's so much easier for both sides to get exactly what you want.
Right,
and
right.
Like most people have like a week, 2 weeks, 3 at maximum. And some people, I think that a big mistake, and I see it also in a lot of other companies that sell tours to Uganda. And they want to cover everything in 2 weeks. And I'm like, that's not possible. I mean, okay, if you have a lot of money and you can do domestic flights, which are crazily expensive in Uganda, it's like one flight can be $500 one way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's madness. Anyway, of course, then that could happen. But if you want to do the Southwest and the Northeast in one trip, you really need 3 weeks minimum. And I see a lot of itineraries trying to squeeze so much into a short time. And I'm like, people won't like this because there'll be there are a few people who say, you know what, I want a busy program. I don't care about resting as long as I have a bed at night. But most people need some time. There are a lot of impressions, and you're traveling sometimes if the roads are not good and all these things, it's tiresome.
Yeah,
so if you have this very squeezed itinerary, you don't really get to experience what I would say is the biggest, nicest part of Uganda. So you're jumping from highlight to highlight, and
it's when they're asking for stuff. Yeah, and when they're asking for stuff like that is when you definitely want to get them on a call. So are you sure? And you could look at the look on their face and make sure that you're communicating.
Exactly.
Because this is a lot of moving around, and then if they look at you and say, yeah, absolutely, and okay, fine.
Yeah, and also I think what many people kind of don't really get is that, okay, the road network in Uganda is vastly improved the last 10, 15 years. So the major roads are really fine, they're good. However, this is a society and a country where there's a lot of unpredictability. Okay, the road could be good, but there was an accident. Or now they're doing roadworks, so it's not that good for 20 kilometers anyway. And that means that instead of traveling from A to B, which is 100 kilometers in 1.5 hours, you will use 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And those kind of things, if I plan your trip in January 26 and you travel in January 27, I mean, I don't know, no one knows where those hiccups are going to be. And I think that's, yeah, people say, oh, Google Maps says it's 3 hours. Yeah, that's Google Maps. But if I know Kampala traffic and I know to go from A to B around Kampala in 2 hours is extremely unlikely. It may happen in the middle of the night or somewhere, very, very early in the morning, but not in daylight.
This kind of goes back to what we were discussing earlier about, people maybe traveling outside of, they get out of college or high school or whatever, and they go travel. Some places are fairly predictable. It's kind of where the conversation was going, but some of these other countries, things change. It can be a challenge. So if somebody that is maybe using ChatGPT to plan their Uganda trip or Google Maps, and I can go on booking.com and book an Airbnb in these places and maybe a day tour or something. And they're like, oh, I can do all this myself. They're totally missing this wisdom and advice. They're not going to get it. And so maybe a first trip, whatever, just another reason.
Yeah,
I'm pretty comfortable. I'm a pretty comfortable traveler, but if I was going to Uganda, I think, and I had only had 2 or 3 weeks to do it, and my family was with me, I don't think I would risk it just trying to do it on my own.
no, it's of course, like I have some people who want to do self drive, and then they reach out to me like just for advice. And I'm like, okay, if you have traveled a lot in Africa and done self drives, fair enough. I mean, it's possible to do a self drive in Uganda, absolutely. But if you're not that seasoned on the type of roads, the type of traffic, the type of country, I would really recommend to spend the extra $50 or something per day to get a professional driver. A, because of safety, because if you don't know the traffic and how traffic works, you're quite prone to accidents. And two, also just because of the experience. Uh, because these professional drivers are also guides, and they know, I mean, some of them, most of them, they're extremely good. They know every corner of the country, and I know they know the stories behind it. Sometimes, it's just a small detour, 200 meters off the road, and there's like a wonderful place that you would have missed. Those kind of things. So I would really, for 90% at least of travelers, I would say definitely use a driver.
I'm going to ask you a question. I know you've been asked before. It's probably an annoying question. Maybe it's not, but I'm going to try and frame this with there's a lot of great things to do. There's a lot of great things you set up for your clients. But for you personally, based on your interests and what you know and what you enjoy, so I'm not saying this is for everybody, what's your favorite thing to do in Uganda? And you can frame your response however you want, but I mean, is there something you just think is really cool that maybe most of the world probably doesn't know about, and you personally just like? Doesn't mean it's for everybody, but
Yeah, well, that's a good question. There are so many things, and I'm not someone who has like one particular thing. But I think I would mention Mount Elgon. Ideally, hiking to the top. It's extremely nice. It's just so beautiful, and that altitude of 4,300 meters, most of us can manage it without altitude sickness. Although there is a risk, but it's not so high. It's so beautiful. Like last time when I was there, February actually this year, we were like, I had a group of 4 people with me, and then like 4 guests, and then of course the guides and the porters. And we were in the mountains for 4 days. And apart from the first and second and last day when we were kind of met some community people who were in the forest picking things, we didn't meet anyone. So you hike for 3, 4 full days and you're just alone in the mountains. It's so beautiful.
wow.
The nature is like, okay, I wouldn't say untouched, but it's really, really pristine and so nice. And also like apart from that, Mount Elgon, if you don't go hiking, you can go to Kaptrova town or Sipi Falls, which is like in the slopes of Mount Elgon, and spend a few days. It's extraordinarily beautiful.
Very, very cool. Is there general guidelines around when to travel to Uganda? Is this a full year-round thing, or what is that? What should our listeners know about that?
Yeah, I get that question a lot, and some people, it depends a little bit on what you want. If you want to do like game drives in the savannah parks, the dry season would be probably where you would have the best chance of seeing a lot of animals, just because the grass is short and you can actually see, which would be January, February, December to February. But especially February is like the peak season in Uganda, and that's for good reason, because it is relatively dry. Also, hiking Mount Elgon, February is perfect. If you go and it's raining, I mean, it will be really much harder climbing up because you keep sliding down.
2 steps up, 1 step down.
When it comes to gorillas, I keep telling people that's in the rainforest. So we have a dry season and a rainy season, but it may rain at any time. So for those more like rainforest, primates, gorillas, chimpanzees, I would say any time of the year. But also July, August is quite relatively dry and good months too.
Do you have a lot of people? Well, I'm trying to think how to ask this. Is it worth, even, I envision a lot of people choose Uganda because of the opportunity to see the gorillas. I'm just guessing. I mean, some of the tour operators I work with, I've got some clients, I've built some websites and some itineraries that involve Uganda. And I've just always got the sense that that's why people go there. And there's other stuff to do while they're there as well. But if you take away, let's say they close the reserve, the area where they're at, they close it for a year. Should people still go to Uganda? Is there still plenty of other stuff to see?
Absolutely.
I'm assuming so, but I'd like to hear that from you.
Yeah, and that has kind of been my, what can I say, my mission, because like I said, I'm based in the northeast, the gorillas are in the southwest. There is a lot more to see. In terms of safari, I would say the best safaris now are in the north, Kidepo, Murchison. There's also Pianupe, which is a wildlife reserve being close to Mount Elgon that I just talked about. We're actually preparing to set up a safari lodge there. So it's a wildlife reserve. It has been decided by the parliament that it will be a national park, but we don't know exactly when that will happen in real life. And these are places, especially Kidepo and Pianope, a little bit like Mount Elgon, very good wildlife, extremely beautiful, and almost no other tourists. So it's really like, it's much less crowded, much more personal than if you go to some of those more famous parks we have in Kenya and Tanzania. And also the chimps, of course, they're not only in Uganda, but Uganda is one of the best places to see chimpanzees in the rainforest and other primates. And also, of course, if you are interested in birds, I think Uganda is second only to Costa Rica in terms of,
Wow.
the density of bird species. So like the number of species per square kilometers, kind of. Because it's quite a small country and there are like more than 1,000 different species.
Okay.
So
Oh, wow.
birders,
I didn't know that.
Really a paradise. I saw a guidebook, like a birding book. I think Ethiopia has like 400 or 500. And it's like several of the parks in Uganda have 500-600 just in one
Just
park.
in one park.
So for birders, Uganda is really a very, very place. It's a place to go.
So most of the conversation around Uganda has been to kind of what else besides the gorillas? And I know that that's important to you to help get that word out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we kind of have to talk about the gorillas as well.
Yeah.
Like if I have this conversation with you, we don't talk about gorillas at all, people are going to be disappointed because that's why I clicked on the link. I wanted to hear about the gorillas. Mm-hmm. So I saw you raise your finger there. If you want to touch on something else before we move into the gorillas, but I definitely want to get into the gorillas.
Yeah, I want to say something about more of active holidays. I mentioned hiking.
Rafting?
But also rafting, running. Yeah. When I mentioned Kapchowa, that is where Joshua Cheptegei, who has the world record of 10,000 and 5,000 meters, Jacob Kiplimo, who has the world record at half marathon, and several others. They are from that small town in the slopes of Mount Elgon. And if you are into running, I mean, you can go to Eldoret in Kenya. Everything is more developed there. But if you come to Kapchowa, it's like, again, it's more personal. Last time I met Cheptegei, because he came to drink juice in the guest house I was staying, So it's like you can run 5 kilometers and you pass 5 homes of 5 international running champions,
Okay.
It's like, and again, in that very beautiful area, you have altitude, you have trails, not a lot of tarmac, but if you're into running a little bit off-road, there is tarmac, of course, but then you just have to go up and down. But if you're into the trails, there's a vast network of running trails. And that's something I'm kind of working on right now to develop that side of it.
I was going to ask that because it's kind of a little niche that I really haven't given much thought to. Is that like, do people take running vacation? I know some people listening are, of course, Jason, I can't believe you don't know that. But do people take running vacations? Because that does not sound like fun to me. I understand the biking. I know biking's real popular, but...
Oh, yeah, there's biking too. People do. Like, we have still, this is like, again, Eastern Uganda is quite in the beginning of developing tourism. There is a half marathon by Joshua Cheptegei's Development Foundation. So we started marketing that a little bit late for this year. And I got a lot of interest, but it's like, okay, but it's just 2 months from now. So can we do next year? So there's a market there. And of course,
so it's probably...
running is like, there's a running wave, at least in Europe at the moment.
Yeah, I know a lot of people run, but I guess what you just said about kind of marketing around like a half marathon or a specific event, because I can envision, it'd be cool. Well, I don't know if I could envision it, but I can imagine some people envisioning going to Uganda and running a half marathon. Sounds really cool.
Yeah. It is.
And all right.
Anyway, now we can go.
That makes sense. All right, gorillas. What let's just start with what should our listeners know about the realities of gorillas in Uganda? Like somebody that's just seen some pictures has thought, man, I'd really like to go see gorillas, but they haven't done any research. Where do we start?
Yeah, so maybe first of all, of course, when we talk of gorillas in Uganda, it is mountain gorillas and not the lowland gorillas. And
what's the difference?
Well, I'm not a gorilla expert, but the lowland gorillas are a little bit smaller and they live in the lowlands.
Okay,
You find them like in Cameroon, Congo, yeah, like the Republic of Congo. Well, the mountain gorillas are only found in quite a small area in the border, like Uganda, Rwanda, and DR Congo. And so they're like 3 countries, but really 2 forests, or 2 kind of biotope or something. So it's in Uganda, we have Bwindi, impenetrable forest. And then you have the Virunga Mountains, which is shared between the 3 countries. So realistically, at the moment, it is Rwanda and Uganda where you can go and see them, because Congo is not very safe as we speak. But they are there. The gorillas are there. So in Uganda, most people, so they started in the early 90s to habituate some of the, like gorillas live in families, and some of the families have been habituated, which means they have been made used to human beings. So actually, we don't know exactly how many gorillas exist. There might be some gorillas that no one has seen yet. But I think, now I forget the numbers. I just know that half of them are in Uganda. But we talk of a few, maybe a couple of thousands. They're really, or less. No, I think it's less. So they're really few. They're highly endangered. The biggest threat, of course, is habitat loss, like the forests are being reduced and reduced. But also like human animal transfer of diseases. Like some years ago, there was I forget the disease, some outbreak of a kind of an infectious disease in a village, and that affected the gorillas. They don't have that immune system because they have been quite isolated in the forest. So in Uganda, have like, and Rwanda, you have some families that have been habituated, and when you go on gorilla tracking, those are the families you go to see, and they're very well guarded and kept. Like someone is keeping an eye on them.
Is that why you go to them? Because they're habituated and basically the guides know where they're going to be, and so it's easier as opposed to trying to go out and find a group of gorillas that don't want to have anything to do with humans. That sounds dangerous and
so you could
and harder.
In the forest for ages without seeing them.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so it's these families that are habituated, and as I said, they're really well guarded. And I think the gorilla tourism in Uganda and probably Rwanda, I don't know so much about Rwanda, but it's really a very nice example of how tourism can support conservation and how those two go hand in hand, because they bring in a lot of income. The gorilla permits are quite expensive, and then of course there's everything around, accommodation and guides and porters and all this. And so that money enables the government both to have enough guards and rangers in the forest to actually protect these animals, and also to work with the communities, to avoid these human-animal conflicts that often appear.
What is close
to a national park?
Yeah, what is a typical, like, let's go back to before the government saw value in having the gorillas there for tourism. What was the typical conflict look like? I know in a lot of places in Africa, it could be, for example, the elephants will come in and eat the garden or eat the fruit trees or destroy things. But with gorillas, historically, what's the conflict that would cause the people to want to hurt the gorillas?
Yeah, it's along the same lines. It's
same lines.
Eating the gardens, eating the vegetables and things like that. So, and sometimes they're like quite simple things that can be done. For example, they don't like tea and coffee. So if you plant that on the border of the forest, that reduces it a lot.
And is there any economic value to the gorillas other than tourism? So for example, rhinos, big problems with rhinos because and elephants because they produce something that there's demand for. But for a gorilla, historically, has there ever been a reason to poach a gorilla?
No, I'm not an expert, but I have never heard about that. I don't think so.
I haven't either. But there's a lot of things I haven't heard about, so I just thought I'd ask in case there was a thing.
My partner, who is much more of a gorilla expert, but no, I don't think so. And they do look a lot like humans. So I think traditionally there's been that kind of can I say, respect, a bit of awe,
Okay.
maybe.
Yeah.
I know that they look like us, and they always they behave in many ways like they're social animals. They when you see them, they're like cleaning each other's fur, and they're feeding their young ones, and playing with the babies. As far as I've understood, that there's been that, at least for many of the peoples living around the forest, that kind of respect, maybe.
Yeah, there's kind of a synergy between the two. You mentioned transmission of disease is obviously one downside. If you've got a bunch of tourists and you're taking them into the jungle and they're getting too close to the gorillas, I can see that would be an issue. I also know like places where there's coral reefs. Scuba divers and snorkelers sometimes stand on the reef. They break the reef off. There's the things like sunblock or bug spray or stuff that can get in the water. And, so the guides, when they're out with the clients, like what is the thing that clients tend to think they should be able to do with the gorillas, but in reality, it's like, no, you're not going to go sit on their lap and take a picture. A good example would be tourists in Yellowstone Park in the United States. They think they want a picture of their kids sitting on the buffalo or the moose or something like that. So I know that people have unrealistic expectations of what their wildlife encounter is going to be like. So how do you set the stage for somebody so they're not disappointed when they get?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. I want to just mention that Uganda wildlife authorities, they are really serious about how they manage this. So every morning when you go tracking, you start with a kind of a briefing, and there are very clear rules. You are not going closer than 7 meters to the gorillas. You have to follow whatever your guide tells you at any time. If you are sick, you are not allowed to go. Like if you're coughing or sneezing or like having this kind of... if you need to use the toilet, you have to dig a hole and cover it. So there are quite strict rules. And also, but the 7-meter rule, of course, that applies to the humans. So you will see photos and videos of gorillas coming close. But then that is gorilla coming to you. And of course, you can't stop that.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens. As far as I know, it has always gone well. They're quite peaceful animals, as long as you don't provoke them, and quite playful. So you will see sometimes pictures of people being pushed a bit, or there was one I saw with this guy sitting very quiet, and this big gorilla was like basically on his back and touching his hair. I haven't experienced that myself though. But you go with a small group, maximum 8 tourists in one group, and at least 2 guides, like professional guides, and the porters, and they all know what to do. And I mean, you have to follow their lead. If you don't, they will.
Let's go. You're leaving. You're out of here. Are they always? You stay at a lodge, presumably a lodge, maybe a camp, and then these are day trips to go out to look at the gorillas, or are people camping out there, or is it just the day trip?
No, it is a day trip. So what I usually do, for example, in Buindi, Buindi has like 4 sectors. The biggest one is called Buhoma. So when you come to the information center at Buhoma and you get the briefing, so they already know, okay, this family is far away, this family is really close. So they look at the clients and they talk to the driver guides who have brought them and say, okay, and then they kind of divide you up so that if you're very fit, you go to the one which is far away, and the ones who look a little bit not able to walk so far, they're assigned to the family which is closer.
So what I hear you saying is, if you look fit, but you don't really want to take the long walk, maybe develop a little bit of limp when you meet your guide.
No, I mean you can also voice your wishes. But the thing is that many, and I see it a lot also in these Facebook groups of people who want to go, and it's like, when you ask someone, is the hike difficult? I mean, the answer to that depends on what is your definition of a difficult hike.
Yeah,
I live in Western Norway now. We have a lot of hills. So I would say, no, it's not very hard. But if you have grown up in a city and all your life you've just been walking on surfaced roads, it's really hard. Maybe even the short one would be quite challenging. Yeah. So that depends a lot. But of course, normally when they're quite adept at seeing who needs to go where. But of course, and sometimes you have the opposite problem. I had a group once that okay, they were a family and they had a younger child who was not going because it's a 50. You have to be 15 and above to go.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, so they were going 2 different days. And then the first group went and they had this long hike and they loved it. It was like, being in the rainforest and just, they hiked for hours and it was so nice. But like, back to your question, yes, it's a day trip. You always come back the same day. Then the next day, it's like they walked for less than 15 minutes and there were the gorillas. And they were like, we wanted to walk in the rainforest too, it's not just about the gorillas. But all in all, yeah, it is.
So I'm assuming that if somebody thinks, you know what, I'm a real do-it-yourself type of person, I'm just going to go rent a room at one of these lodges or close by or whatever, and then I'll just go look for gorillas. They're going to be sadly disappointed, I'm assuming.
Yeah, they will. So, like I said, there are like only 8 permits per family, per gorilla family per day.
Yeah.
It's strictly once per day. Like you don't have 2 groups to one family in one day. It's only registered tour companies in Uganda that can actually purchase the permits from wildlife authorities.
And one of those companies can't turn around and sell a permit to somebody that's going to go do it themselves. You got to be with a guide. I'm just restating things that are probably really obvious, but
and like I said again, the animals are well guarded, and also like last time I was in Buhoma, I was like in the village outside, and I was going to walk from my lodge to, I don't remember where I was going. I was just taking a walk in the village, and within 5 minutes, the guards came and said, "Oh, you can't walk alone. We're walking with you." So there's no way you can just sneak into the forest as a foreigner. I would say that's as good as impossible.
And I wanted to mention that because I think it's important, because I can, not listeners to this show, I'm sure, but I can imagine some people there's gorillas there. I'm doing the self-drive thing. I'm going to go stay in the village and I'm sure that I'll figure out some way to see gorillas. And then they get there and somebody says, well, no, you have to have a permit. You got to buy the permit through the tour operator. And there's no permits because you're here for 2 days and you want to go tomorrow. And those things I assume they sell well in advance.
Yeah, they do.
So yeah, I suspect every once in a while there's somebody.
But if you're doing a self-drive and you're just booking on accommodation, many of the lodges in the area do have the license and they can help you secure a permit, but you have to book it in advance.
Okay, all right, yeah. And it's
you don't have to buy a package tour. I mean,
okay.
It is possible to do it through the lodge, or not all lodges, but at least many of them do that.
But again, the permits are probably not super cheap, I'm guessing.
No. At the moment, they're $800 in Uganda and $1,500 in Rwanda.
Okay. So that's important, because I just imagine people showing up just thinking they're just going to be able to see gorillas, and then someone tells them, well, we can set it up for you tomorrow, but it's $800 a piece. Mm-hmm. And then them going on social media or TripAdvisor and saying, don't go to Uganda. They're going to scam you because they want $800, and I'm pretty sure it's not that much. And I
haven't heard of that problem actually.
No, okay.
I think most people do quite some research, and also like these rates. I mean, they're publicly available.
This is the rate, and okay,
all right, so good deal. This is the rate cut from Uganda Wildlife Authority, and this is the price. And of course, there's a markup because it's a bit of a hassle also for the tour operators to actually get the permits.
Yeah, no.
So we pay $800 to Uganda Wildlife Authority, but we have more expenses in getting that fixed.
Yeah, you're not likely going to sell $800 permits for $800
exactly
just to make your hostel guests happy that are paying $20.
No, you're not. And not just the markup, but these are real costs. Actually, like someone has to go to the office in Kampala and make the payment, and then there's the taxes and there's VAT and So yeah.
All right, it's not quite the same as I was trying to think of a good example, but maybe if you're in Bali or somewhere in Southeast Asia and someone says, I'll take you out and show you some monkeys for $100, a little different.
Yeah.
All right. Very, very cool. We've discussed a bunch of different things. I know we could just keep going. We should probably come back and do it again at some point.
That'll be fun.
But before we wrap up, I want to ask you, what did I forget to ask you? What do you think it's important that I should have asked you? Or just generally, what do you want our listeners to know about you, your business, Uganda, life in general before we wrap up?
Oh, well, that's a big question. Well, we've talked about a lot of things. I think I would still just we haven't really talked about Karamoja,
Yes.
which is the part of the country where our farm is. And I would say it's the most interesting part of the country. Culturally, it's the only cultural group or ethnic group in Uganda that has kind of stick to their traditions throughout the colonial time and post-colonial times, much more than the others. So people are like pastoralists with a lot of cows and goats, and the whole culture around that, it's really interesting. And also the nature, the landscapes, the mountains, the everything. It's really it's a very hidden gem, but it's really a gem. And I think if you get in touch with Theo, that I gave you his contacts, he will talk more about that. But that's really, and I think that's really what, even if you want to see gorillas, but maybe next time, or have enough time to also go to Karamoja, because it's like out of this world. It's really unique.
So Karamoja is the region, the village. Help me out. The region.
Karamoja is the region, like the far northeast.
Okay. And the name of the farm is the same as your business, Alakara? Or what's the name of the farm?
Yeah, the guest house is Alakara Guest House.
Yeah, that's what I had remembered. I just wanted to make sure, because we're going to have a link right to your website so they can go learn about the farms, the tours, the packages, the groups, all that stuff right there on your website, right?
Great.
All right, cool. Well, we will have that in the notes. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason.
Fascinating conversation for me, and I learned a ton of things, and look forward to collaborating with you on some projects in the future. And
thank you. And thank you so much. That's really nice. Yeah.
We'll chat with you soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
I trust you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed recording it. If you're enjoying the Big World Made Small podcast, please take a moment to tell the algorithm by subscribing and posting a review so that others can benefit as well. I also invite you to take a quick trip over to bigworldmadesmall.com and join our private adventure travel community to receive new episode notifications, special access to our guest experts, and perhaps even some exclusive partner offers that we haven't discussed on the podcast. I'll publish another episode soon. Until then, keep exploring. It's the best way to make a big world feel just a bit smaller.